The New York Jets traded for James Robinson this week, and we're going to talk about what his role is going to be here in Week 8 against the New England Patriots. Hey, what's going on? I am Matt O'Leary, back with another video, and I wanted to talk about James Robinson and what I think he's going to do this week. Before we get started today, I wanted to mention where you can follow me at Matt O'Leary and why on social media. You could also subscribe to the Just Jets podcast wherever it is that you get your New York Jets podcasts. So the New York Jets made a big move after unfortunately losing Breece Hall for the remainder of the season due to an ACL injury. They went out and they traded a conditional 6th round pick for James Robinson, which could turn into a 5th round pick depending on usage. If it's a 6th or 5th, even if it's the higher end on a 5th rounder, phenomenal move from Joe Douglas. We talked about it earlier in the week, but the reason why it's such a good one is because the Jets heavily rely on the run game. This is a guy who's just 24 years old. He already has an 1,000-yard season under his belt. He can be a lead rusher, but I think the duo of Michael Carter and James Robinson is a really nice 1-2 punch. Now, obviously, he's not going to go out and replace Breece Hall. No one can. Breece is a very special player, which is why they moved up for him in the 2nd round of the draft this past year, but he runs nasty. He is a nasty runner. He's bigger than Michael Carter. He can get the short yardage situations down on the goal line. I think that's a perfect fit for James Robinson. But my thought on what I wanted to talk about today was just what I'm kind of expecting from him and what, people are kind of projecting from him. And I was looking at Fantasy Pros, and they had projections for James Robinson for this week. And I honestly think it looks probably pretty close to what I think he's going to end up with. They're projecting, and I'm rounding here, but projecting 8 carries, 32 yards, 1 catch for 8 yards. And that honestly sounds about right. I think he's going to be slightly limited this week, which is fine. I think they'll rely more on Michael Carter, who's been here and has, obviously he knows the system, where James Robinson's less than a week he's been here. So Robinson has 2 games before the bye week, but I think he's really going to be utilized much more after the bye week and get in his groove after the bye. But my expectation for this week would be for him to get eased in a little bit. I don't really necessarily think he's going to be, the lead back in any sense of the word. Like if 8 carries for Robinson sounds about right, then I think you're looking at somewhere between 12 to 16 for Michael Carter, somewhere in that range. I mean, I would anticipate the Jets to run the ball, especially if they're up in the second half, which I think on paper they should be. But New England allows the 8th most rushing yards against this season. They struggle against the run. They are averaging 136.7 yards per game against. So this would project to be a game where you want to run the football. And with Michael Carter getting the lead role, I would imagine for this week, James Robinson, I would think, would be the one who's maybe getting 7 to 9 carries in that 30 to 40 yard range, and maybe a catch or 2. He can catch out of the backfield, but Michael Carter is definitely someone that you want to rely on out of the backfield. Don't expect to see a lot of Ty Johnson or Bam Knight. We'll see which one of those guys are activated. I do think it's going to be the Carter and Robinson 1-2 punch. They gave up that pick for a reason, and James Robinson is someone who can come in and be a lead back if need be, but that's not my anticipation for this week. And I think based on the last couple of weeks, Zach is going to throw the ball a little bit more. And with Breece Hall out, it's going to affect the run game. We'll see how much it affects the run game. But again, this is against a New England defense that's really struggled against the run so far this year. But I would anticipate Elijah Moore to be more involved, no pun intended. I would think Garrett Wilson has a role. Tyler Conklin and the tight ends would have a little bit of a role this week. So I do think they throw more than what they had against Green Bay and against Denver, 2 defenses who are very, very good and tough to throw against. But New England's defense, especially last week against Justin Fields and the Bears, really, really struggled. So, but looping this all back to James Robinson, don't expect a ton for him this week. Like if you're thinking about starting him in fantasy, I have him on one of my fantasy teams. I don't anticipate starting him, and I just think it's going to be a week or 2 before he really hits his groove. And like I said, probably after the bye week, because you have this game against New England, then Buffalo at home, then you're on the bye. I think after the bye is probably where you'll see him really hit his stride, get in here. And this offense, I think, is going to hit their stride after the bye. But for this week, somewhere around 8 carries, 32 yards. That sounds about right. So let me know down below what you think about James Robinson. What do you think he does this week? Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new. I'll talk to you next time.